Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new edition of Human Conversations. I'm Jessica Lockhart. This is Human Conversations from the International Institute of Humanology. One more month approaching, discussing, talking about a human topic. For those of you who've never attended any of our Human Conversations, you know that, or you might not know that every month, our followers and our readers choose a human topic. And we devote the whole month to discussing it and learning about it and disseminating knowledge and information about it. And the topic chosen by them for this month is none other than beliefs. So for this whole month, we've been talking about beliefs, beliefs at work, beliefs regarding, I don't know, when you move abroad, all kinds of issues related to beliefs. And the one perspective we're going to be taking on tonight for this human conversation is who needs beliefs? Do we all need them? Do just a certain special type of people need beliefs? To discuss this, I am extremely happy to introduce the first expert panelist who's going to be sharing the panel with me. I am excited to introduce someone who's joining us all the way from Canada. There was a little mistake, a little typo in our magazine. It said the United States. No, he's joining us from Canada, beautiful land of Canada. His name is Brad Hardie, and he's an informative speaker, certified trauma-informed coach, expert in trauma, behavioral management, and human development. He's co-principal at Moving the Human Spirit. He is an accomplished master certified coach with extensive experience and expertise in his field. He's earned recognition as an ICF, that is the International Coaching Federation, mentor coach. He's also a master practitioner of neurolinguistic programming, NLP, enabling him to employ powerful techniques for personal transformation. As a certified trauma counselor and certified trauma professional, Brad possesses specialized knowledge and skills in addressing psychological trauma. He is also equipped with a trauma-informed coaching certification, allowing him to offer trauma-informed support to his clients. Additionally, Brad is a certified cognitive behavioral therapy practitioner and a certified dialectical behavior therapy practitioner, utilizing evidence-based approaches to promote mental well-being. Together with his accomplishments, Brad is a co-founder of Moving the Human Spirit, an organization aimed at promoting personal growth and self-improvement. His innate ability to establish deep connections with others in a matter of minutes sets him apart as a leading mentor and life coach. So, as you can imagine, I'm over the moon because I have Brad with me tonight on Human Conversations. Brad, welcome.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks so much for having me here tonight, and I'm really pleased to be talking about beliefs. It's such an important part of all of our existence. So thanks for having me.
I am really happy to have you here, especially because I know you're an expert in many of the things we're going to be discussing tonight. Beliefs is one of the 4 elements of the human being model that we use in Humanology. So it is really close to my heart that we talk about beliefs. So before we start discussing the topic, I would like to invite our viewers and our followers to use this opportunity to write their comments and questions down on our messages on YouTube so we can use them and we can broadcast them and stream them as we are speaking. So if you're watching this and you have any questions, don't doubt it. Just go ahead, write your question, write your comment. All questions and comments are welcome. And I'm sure we'll get a little minute to answer your doubts. So, Brad, we're talking about who needs beliefs. You have 5 minutes to give us your opinion.
Right. Thank you. Well, beliefs is a very deep topic, of course. Beliefs are what coordinate and move us towards our lives in different directions. A lot of the time, beliefs actually will dictate or direct where we move to in our lives, what we do in our lives, how we do it, how we interact with our environments. So who needs beliefs? Well, I know it would be a shortcoming to say that not everybody needs beliefs, because that's true. We all need belief of some sort. We need belief in ourself. We need to be able to have an understanding of who we are and believe in what we're capable of doing. We need to have beliefs in order to have a firm foundation by which we morally go through the world. And beliefs, of course, come from all different places. We can make beliefs ourselves. We can be given beliefs from our parents, our grandparents. We can adapt beliefs from cultural and social settings, religious, philosophical, psychological settings. So they're a huge part of our life in general. And again, the reason that I feel that they're important is because when we live truly to our beliefs, we can, most of the time, have the ability to do much more than what we thought. And sometimes the other piece that I'll hopefully have an opportunity to speak to with some of your great questions is that sometimes limiting beliefs are things that we have to look at. So in the work that I do, we certainly see beliefs as one of the foundational pieces that we work with. And of course, beliefs run very close to values, and those two things generally make up our human condition. Our values and beliefs dictate and move us into different directions in our lives and what we should be doing. So the short answer is everyone, it's important to have beliefs. And the other interesting thing in the work that we do is that all beliefs are different, and they have to be honored and understood to a level so that we can get along.
I love it, Brad, because that's basically my own take on who needs beliefs. We at the Institute say that everybody needs beliefs because beliefs are what guide us in our decisions. We all have beliefs. And when we talk about beliefs, we don't talk about religion. We don't talk about spirituality, which is what many people tend to believe. No? Belief. A lot of people think that when we talk about beliefs, we're just talking about religious beliefs, and that is not true. Beliefs refer to anything and everything in life. Whether I prefer coffee over tea, that's a belief. If I consider human beings basically evil and mean, that's a belief. If I think that animals are dangerous, that's a belief. Anything and everything that we think or say that begins by expressions such as I think, I believe, it's my opinion, in my view, all those reflect your inner beliefs. But the tricky thing about beliefs is that many of those beliefs we're not even aware that we have. Some of those beliefs we acquire as children. We build our belief system based on our experiences and the way in which we interpret our reality. And that, in turn, conforms the world we see, or the way we see the world, the worldview. What we believe is basically what we see. And there's something that I am sure Brad could confirm later on that is called the bias or confirmation bias that somehow helps us see and highlight whatever confirms our views and our beliefs in our reality. So at the end, our worldview is impacted by our beliefs, but our beliefs are also impacted by what we see and experience in the world. And beliefs change throughout our whole lives. Even if we have subconscious beliefs, some beliefs that guide us that we're not even aware that we have, they're still guiding us. They're still behind our choices. So choosing things in your life without being aware of why it is that you're choosing them is what might limit us at a certain time. Brad, you spoke about limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs are those that don't let us fly, that don't let us grow, that don't let us expand, that keep us limited. Some of our clients, though, prefer to keep those limiting beliefs because they give them something else in exchange. And we'll talk about that later on too. Limiting beliefs can be chosen as some of the beliefs to be preserved by a person, even if they know that they're limiting them. So at the end of the day, every belief we have is because at a certain moment in our lives, we chose to make them ours. And the key, in our opinion at the Institute, is that we all should be aware of the beliefs we have and ask ourselves whether we want to keep them or change them. One last point, beliefs cannot be erased, and that's it. In order to get rid of a belief, you have to find a replacement. You have to find another belief that will take the place of that older one. If you, for example, have one of those horrible limiting beliefs that says something like, I don't deserve to be loved, which is sadly a very typical one, you can't just say, no, I'm going to be loved by everyone now. It doesn't work like that. You're going to have to find something else that allows you to start seeing the world from that new interpretation, that new perspective, but something that you can end up believing and truly make yours. As you can see, I agree with Brad too. There's a lot to discuss. Beliefs are really, really powerful, and they affect every aspect in our lives. So Brad, I'm going to invite you now to join me on this virtual stage. And we're going to, oh, by the way, before I continue, sorry, Brad, the other expert panelist who was supposed to be with us just sent me a message that she's running late because of some problem. So if she can make it on time, she'll join us. If not, I'm sure Brad and I will have a lot to discuss. Remember, everyone watching us, do send us your questions and comments. So Brad, there's a set of questions that you and I are going to answer together now. And with our answers, the goal is to try to give our viewers different perspectives that can somehow blend together and give them a wider understanding of what it is that we're talking about. So what would you say if I ask you, what would you say is the most limiting belief you ever encountered, and how did you deal with it?
And are you asking me from a personal level or from a client level? I think a personal level, is that right?
You choose how to answer. And you
Well,
could answer both, because we don't have the third speaker today, so we have a little bit more time. So if we ask you personally, you don't need to answer personally if you don't want to, Brad.
Yeah, no, I'm okay. Personally, I have to confess that, what you spoke about, Jessica, one of the hugest limiting beliefs I had in my life. And one of the interesting things that when I talk about beliefs, of course, in our work, the reality is that we talk about beliefs from a point of view where beliefs can be changed. As you said, they can be replaced. And, lots of people are living experiences of that. And one of the things that we work very hard against in our coaching, in our counseling, in our practices, is that lots of people think about beliefs as being true. We take beliefs as truth, and the reality is that it's not necessarily true unless we can determine that it's true. So if I think about having a belief, what we asked our questions around the belief, where, as you said, where did it come from? How did we get it? How did it show up? And it's usually from our environments. And we want to do what we refer to as truth proofing. So we look at those beliefs and say, is this truth or is it just a belief? So one of the most limiting beliefs I experienced in my life was, as you talked about, the most common one was that I wasn't lovable. I wasn't worthy of having someone else's appreciation. And that happened, when I was younger. And there might have been many things that contribute to that environment, the stress that the family system was on at the time, what was going on in the environment itself, the daily stressors that they had to deal with. And, I can happily say now, because I'm sitting in front of you, that I no longer have that belief. I'm quite happy, I would say normal, but there's no such thing in my book, but I'm definitely a well-adjusted, I hope, person. And of course, am playing to my unique characteristics and personality, and that's how we show up and do the work that we do. We figure out that belief that we have around being unlovable or being unobtainable, or that we don't deserve things when we might be younger, and figuring out who we are. We know that we can change those. We know that from our work, we can move forward and engage people on a deeper level to be able to look at these beliefs, to be able to coordinate them with their value systems and ask deeper questions around them. So I love the idea that we can change beliefs. I also think one of the great questions that we asked often is, what would you like to fill the space with when that belief gets changed? Because a great deal of the time, our curiosity is, are we holding the belief because we want to be right, or are we holding the belief because we want to be different? So actually looking at it and saying, is this a belief because I want to be right about something and can't employ a different idea? Or do I want this to shift? Do I want a different belief that's going to, again, serve me better in the long run? So that was my limiting belief. It is also one that I see all the time in clients. And it's one that's really well worth investigating because there's so much information in it. And pardon me, when we actually take an opportunity to look at it a little deeper, we can uncover things that may not be true. And lots of times, if we open up to the possibility that we are lovable, that we do matter, that we can show up and shine our light, then of course, what happens is we are moving the client in a different direction that's more rewarding and balanced in their lifetime.
Yeah, totally agree. It's funny because that is one of the most common beliefs that we encounter in our clients. It's
Mhm.
something that is so widely spread out, and it affects people so badly that many times they spend years and years and years suffering a lot because they truly believe they're not lovable.
Yeah.
They don't deserve love, or they're at fault, or there's something basically wrong in them. Those are really, really tough beliefs.
Yeah. Well, we
If
see
I,
it. Yeah, sorry. I was
yeah,
going to say
go
we see
ahead,
it
go
in
ahead.
the worthiness of people. You know, it's I don't deserve to get the promotion. I don't deserve the relationship that I want. I don't deserve the family. All of these things that prevent us from moving forward and initiating a life that we desire. And sometimes we can stay on the outskirts of that, looking at what's desired, but not moving toward it because of that limiting belief or these limiting beliefs.
Totally, totally. And what I was going to share is a little anecdote of my own too, just to show people that it's not always these huge, big, limiting beliefs that limit our lives. I can share something that happened to me. And this is a true story. So, when I was very, very young and I lived in California, a spider bit me once, and it was a poisonous spider. And I was very little, I was 2, 3 years old. But I do remember the spider on my leg and how it really grew, my leg, not the spider, how it grew, and it was horrible. And I developed acute arachnophobia. I was terrified of spiders. It's by no coincidence that my father also suffered from acute arachnophobia, and the next door uncle also suffered from the same. So, my belief that spiders were dangerous was reinforced by all these people in my surroundings. And it got to a point where I would, if I saw a spider, no matter how big or small, I would just stand up and start walking backwards and leave the room, whatever was happening in the room. I could be in the middle of a test. I just stand up and walk out of the room. So, in a sense, it was an extremely limiting belief. I remember I was once invited to spend a long weekend at some friend's house. Here in Spain, it was a fiesta kind of long weekend. And when I went to sleep, there was a spider in the bedroom. So I left the room, I sat in the living room and stayed there the whole night. It was really limiting because there were many things I couldn't do. My parents, aware of my problem, decided to hire a psychologist and took me to be treated by the psychologist, who had one of these approaches by which the first thing they do is they show you images of spiders so you would become familiarized with them. Well, I can tell you that the first time I went to see him and he showed me pictures of spiders, I stood up, started walking backwards, and never returned because I couldn't even take the pictures. My fear was so huge. It wasn't until many, many years later, in fact, until I became an optimism coach and humanologist, that I was training and I attended one of Tony Robbins's famous seminars. And one of the things that Tony said was that fear is always in the future, that whatever we're afraid of is not actually happening as we're afraid of it. If I'm afraid of spiders, I'm not afraid of the spider right there and then, I'm afraid that the spider might do something to me. And he taught us this in a very dramatic way. Fire walking. So he organized all these long strips of embers that we had to walk on.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I did. And I remember that one of the things he taught us was a mantra that we had to keep repeating in our minds, in our heads, and even out loud, to be able to focus on that instead of focusing on the fear. And he explained, when you face the fear, when you face the fire, your mind immediately goes into, oh, what if I burn? Well, in my case, I am disabled. And I'm not in a wheelchair because I'm highly stubborn, but I should have been in a wheelchair over 20 years ago. So facing that fire there, it was like, oh, what if I trip and fall and end up in that wheelchair that I don't want to be on? That was my thought. And it completely paralyzed me.
Mm.
And everybody was cheering me. Come on, you can do it, you can do it. And I was all like, they're paralyzed. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. But then I remembered what Tony had said. He said, fears in the future. I'm not fallen down. I haven't fallen down yet. I'm about to walk on fire, but I'm not walking on fire yet. And I have to distract my mind. So I did that. I said, I cannot remember the damn mantra he gave us, but I'll keep my mind busy with something else. I'll recite one of my old school poems. And I did that. I started reciting the poem in my head, and I walked on that fire. A few months later, I went back to Switzerland because I was living in Switzerland then. I was in my office one day all by myself. Suddenly there's a spider crawling up the wall. At any other time, I would have just stood up and left the room. But then I looked at the spider and I said, what am I afraid of? Am I afraid of the spider itself? I said, no. Spiders are not worse, not better than cockroaches, mosquitoes, or bees. And I'm not afraid of those. Why am I afraid of it? And then analyzing it, I was afraid of the moment the spider would step on me, would set its little paws on me. It's touching me is what really scared me, because in my mind, it was associated to acute pain. So I said, okay, what if I prevent it from getting on me? Spiders jump. So I said, I have to do something to stop the spider from jumping. This was all my reasoning while I was watching that spider climbing up the wall.
Yeah.
So I said, I know. I grabbed a glass. Fortunately, I had a plastic glass with me. And I said, if I manage to trap the spider, and remember, Brad, I had never been able to kill a spider before, even with a shoe. It paralyzed me completely. But I said, if I can distract my mind long enough to trap the spider, I won. And I did. I just went like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, it's going to jump on me. Now think about something else. I started reciting that poem again. I trapped it. And then I got a carton and I got the spider out of my house. Since then, I'm not afraid of spiders anymore. And I take them out of my house alive. So that was a belief that completely limited my life. And it can be changed. And I'm just giving you this one example because it's something mundane, but something, I think, really powerful that proves that we have the power to change our lives if we know how to. Sorry, it was a little long answer, but I thought it was worth sharing because it was a very clear example.
It's a good demonstration about how we store things. And that is, you talked about you're afraid of the future fear of it. And the reality is our mind stores these memories and they go into our fear center. And what are we doing? We are constantly sorting for safety. So every day in our environments, that's what we do by our visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory. We are constantly sorting for safety. That's what we do as humans. And I'm not talking about, safety against things that are extreme, but I'm talking about always sorting for safety as an organism so that we can carry on. And if you were bitten by something, then your mind would instill that in the hippocampus and say, the next time I see a spider, I don't want to be bitten. So I'm going to make sure that I present this perceived threat so that I can then do the right action, which in your case was back out of the room. So it's very interesting. So it brings me to a point which I think about quite a bit. Our body is set up for one intention, and that's to keep us safe. So even though in the experience of it, no matter if it's anxiety or frustration or anger or fear of spiders, the reality is that the underlying purpose, the deepest piece is that the organism only wants to survive, and it does that by doing these automatic things, such as moving to fear when we see a spider. And of course, if we are able to build those neural pathways, we know that we're also able to change those neural pathways. And that's what you're talking about. And the first step of that is to have awareness and to push through it like you did. So,
Yeah, and
bravo.
this brings me that was, I mean, it was not a merit I can feel proud of because it was Tony Robbins talking to me. But I did learn the lesson.
Someone had to instill it in you, though, and you had to bring that forward in the moment, right? So
Totally.
that's all
Of
you.
course. Now I help other people do the same because
Exactly.
it's life-changing, completely life-changing. So this brings me to another question that I have for you, Brad,
Hmm.
because we've just said that beliefs can be changed. But how would you go about a client who identifies a limiting belief but chooses not to change it?
Hmm.
What
Well,
would you say to this person? What would you do?
yeah, when we think about, in my work, and we hold everyone as unique and capable, and capable being the main word there. So if I am working with a client that has a limiting belief and they know they have awareness of it and they don't want to change that limiting belief, there's two things that occur to me. One of them is that it's not my choice of whether or not they change it. They have to want to change that limiting belief. The second one is that if the limiting belief is not giving them something that's positive. So we do an inquiry around what are they getting from the limiting belief that is positive. Because if there's not something attached to it that's positive, then we have an opportunity to say, what do we want to do with this limiting belief? So if I'm confronted with a client that has a limiting belief and they don't want to get rid of it, my curiosity goes immediately to, what is this limiting belief giving you? And that is what the investigation becomes. It's not about whether the limiting belief is good or bad, or whether it is something they want to keep or let go of. If they just truly don't want to leave it, then it's like we need to understand, what is it that the limiting belief gives them that keeps them attached to it. And that in that investigation, then of course all types of things can come out. Is the belief true or not true? Is it something they were told or given themselves, or did they give it to themselves? And how does it serve them? Does it move them in the direction of their desired change? Are they going where they want to be? Is it supporting them in the life that they are choosing for themselves, or the life that they see for themselves? How does it play to where they want to go? So further investigation of a belief like that is always a great thing, because if they get to a point where it's like they can't truly understand if there's a positive behind the limiting belief, then we have an area to do further investigation. If there is no positive, why is the limiting belief there? What do they get from the limiting belief? How might they change it to better serve them? And of course, they're the ones making those decisions. We're just asking the questions around it. So that's
Yeah,
usually what
see,
I think of limiting belief. Yeah.
I would like to present our audience with an example of a limiting belief that someone has and they're not willing to change. Perhaps, one of those beliefs that people are suffering from something and they get really angry at somebody else or at something. And sometimes they discover that they don't want to give up that limiting belief because that anger is acting as an energizer to them. It's something that gives them a sense of power, a sense of strength. Because when they're angry, they feel a bit more powerful than they usually do. So sometimes people might hold on to limiting beliefs because they have the perception that is giving them something that they wouldn't otherwise have. So one example would be that, something that angers you very much, it's not good for you because it limits you somehow, but you want to use it still because it gives you something else.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to highlight that people need to be aware not only of their limiting beliefs, but also of the consequences of those beliefs and what rewards they get from them. Because, as you said, Brad, what we also believes again, that no belief is good or bad. Beliefs serve a person certain purposes, and they use beliefs to see the world, interpret it, and there's no one in the whole wide world who can tell us that one interpretation is the right one, because nobody in the world has all views, all perspectives about anything. It would be God, and we're not God. So, there's always room for improvement. There's always room to learn. And interpretation is something really subjective and unique. So beliefs are, by definition, always subjective.
Mm-hmm. It was interesting. You said something there that, tweaked me. It is a perception. So the reality is that what we're doing is experiencing our perception. Everything we experience is our perception. The world around us is how we perceive it. And that's sometimes how we get into conflict, is because we think our way, our perception of what's happening is the right way. And it comes back to using your analogy of being angry with someone. And, that can come from very deep things. It might be rejection, it might be fear, it might be not good enough. And we can hold anger in the situation you were talking about towards someone or something. And what do we keep doing? We keep reinforcing that belief about them either not being good or not being good enough, or them restricting us, or there's a conflict, and we will look for ways to make that true or to make it right for us. But it's really just our perception of what's going on. And that anger, again, like you said, can feed that belief system that says, yes, I am right, and here's the proof. We're always looking for proof that we are correct. So, but it is just our perception. It changes all the time. So very interesting.
Yeah, totally. And sometimes people find it very difficult to question that one belief, that beliefs are a matter of perception. See, when people are really firm in their beliefs, they stand proud and they defend those beliefs, usually with a lot of conviction, But when people are not that certain about their beliefs, they feel insecure, uncertain, and they show a certain insecurity in their demeanor. So it's very important that we realize that a lot of people are really strong in their beliefs and they defend them very much because they're firmly established. Whereas when somebody is really scared and worried and uncertain, it might be because their beliefs are not that firm. So, when you tell people your beliefs are a matter of perspective, they might not like what you're saying and they might react in an angry way. So we should also consider that when working with people and their beliefs. I have another question for you, Brad, and then there's a question from the audience.
Sure.
How can we help disseminate more empowering beliefs, for example, in children? Because we've been talking about limiting beliefs, but there are other beliefs that might empower us, make us feel stronger, more powerful, more capable. How can we make sure that children kind of acquire, inherit, learn, make theirs some more empowering beliefs? Is there anything we can do?
There's always something we can do about everything. So,
I believe.
when I think about, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because there's a lot of context to that question itself. Because, we know that the belief that we have now is usually inherited. We know that it's usually inherited by the family system, by the culture, by the society, by the belief systems that we were brought up in. So that's why we have an opportunity to look at limiting beliefs. When I think about how we can instill in children or, present ideas to them in a way that is supportive, empowering, building. When I talk to people who are working with their children, they're always like, I worry about how they'll be raised, how they will end up, what they'll believe, what their values will be. And the thing that I offer to them in that time is the only one thing that you have to remember is that you just have to show up the way that you want the child to be. So if you're concerned about how they may have beliefs or values or how they move through their environments, then what we need to do is we have to model that for them. So model the person that you want your child to be, and that will instill and give them firm beliefs. The interesting things, in the truth of the matter for me, and again, I'm talking truth over beliefs, but when I look at these types of things, anyone that is firm in their belief and feels comfortable with it is then also and confident, like you were talking about. It's the insecurities that happen in our world where people will take up arm or move against people who do not believe the same thing. If we're comfortable in our belief and we feel secure in ourselves and confident, the truth of the matter is that that opens us up to other opinions. I don't need to have my belief forced on other people. I'm more open to hear their belief systems. And as you said earlier on when we started talking, beliefs change throughout our lives. What's the purpose of the belief at the time? My beliefs when I was 20 were completely different than they are now in my so it's like they keep changing throughout our whole lives. So we want to be able to be open to other people's opinions and ideas and thoughts and beliefs. So if we raise our children in a manner that says, I'm going to model the person that I hope that they'll be, then I think that is one way that we can also open them up to a broader, more balanced, more educated, more possibility-driven life. And that, of course, is, call it a big hope or a small hope, but wouldn't it be fantastic if we could all live from that perspective of being open?
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. See, whenever a person feels that their belief system is being threatened, they feel attacked, they feel under scrutiny, they might resort to trying and defend their beliefs with force
Mm-hmm.
because they feel insecure, is what you're saying. So we usually say it's not a matter of telling others what to do or telling others that they're wrong or telling others that their beliefs are not appropriate or right, because by doing that, we may cause the opposite reaction we're looking for. Instead of getting them to question their beliefs, they're going to defend them. And we see this sadly around the world every single day. We see how people defend their ideas and their beliefs and their opinions with force, strength, power, even violence, because they feel threatened. If we want our children to be more open to questioning their own beliefs, I think it's important first to be role models, as you said. And part of that role modeling, I think, has to show them the importance of critical thinking and how we go about questioning ourselves, how we go about questioning our interpretation of the world and accepting that other people may have different views and that that is okay because I might learn something that might help me grow as a human being. So it's not just a matter of showing, I think, my belief. It's not a matter of showing our children, this is what I believe. I am an open person. No, but also the whole process, I think. I think that children can learn to do about anything. If we learn them that they can take control over their beliefs, that they can identify, question, and change those that are not helping them at a certain moment, they will be much more open to embarking on the process than if they're just given beliefs to follow and that's it. So I think that teaching them these strategies and skills could also help them be stronger in the future with a more flexible view of the world, I would say. And I think that could help us disseminate more empowering beliefs. And one of the empowering beliefs is I can choose because
Right.
I have power to choose.
It's interesting. We spend a great deal, I think about educational systems and I think about how people move through environments and I think about, our reward for right and our punishment for wrong. And I think as a result of that, in developing that kind of mindset in society, and it might be a broad statement, but what if we were able to change that? What if it wasn't an or and it was an and? I have
Yeah.
my belief and you have your belief, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're not making a right or wrong. So moving from this place of or, because sometimes we can move into an area of orness, if you will, and we could hopefully move into allness, which would be better. So it is a matter of saying, I have beliefs and someone else has beliefs, and that's okay. There's nothing right or wrong about it. Instead of there's my beliefs, or you either believe this way or you believe that way. But putting an and in place of an or definitely could help our children, like you said, be more open, be more available. Also, as a result of that, of course, there's a deeper education that comes with it because we spend in the human condition much more time learning about our neighbors, learning about other cultures, learning about other experiences. And how much more rewarding could that be?
Yeah. You know, that's one of our dreams that Humanology is taught in all primary schools in the world. Let children learn who they are and how to take control of whom they are at an early age. They
Mhm.
can learn so much. We have a few questions from the audience. I'm going to start taking questions from the audience now, if that's okay by you, Brad. Yes?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, there's a person, I think, from Spain telling us limiting or empowering beliefs, fears, ups and downs, and so on come from our human nature of thinking too much. How can we control this internal voice that travels with us during our lives? The question has been cut short. I think the person writing it got interrupted or something, but I think we get the gist of the question.
Sure.
So um, we think too much. First question, is that a belief, Brad?
Well, it's interesting because really what we're saying when we think too much is what we're saying that we spend time in worry. We're actually saying that we're working with memories that haven't existed yet. So if I'm hearing that person correctly, what we're talking about is we spend more time worrying about what's going to happen as opposed to living in the here and now. So if someone were to ask me, how do I start managing this particular area about spending all of my time, oftentimes we refer to it here as I'm in my head too much. So we want to be able to engage the moments that we're in. Worry comes from this, again, fear or reminiscent or thought of something that hasn't even occurred yet. And two things can happen when we spend all of our time in our head or when we are worried about the future, is that one, we can self-sabotage by making sure that it happens because we desire to be right. And as a result of that, whether it's a positive or a negative, we can sometimes start moving toward it. So I think about it as setting an intention. So if I'm worried about going on a trip that X, Y, and Z might happen, I can worry about it so much that I will manifest X, Y, Z happening because we are geared towards completion and, of course, being right. The second thing about it for me is that if we find ourselves in worry or, again, uh, ruminating about things that haven't existed yet, that tells me that we're spending no time in the here and now. And as a result of that, we're missing the moments that we're in. Because the reality is that there is only one moment, and that is the here and now. This is where our life is existing, and this is where it's happening. The only other places we go are two sets of memories, memories of what we're thinking about in the future and the memory of the past. And people can sometimes exist in those two places. They will spend their entire time being in the past. They will spend their entire time being in the present or in the future. And what we want to do is speak to them more about being in the here and now, in the present, because this is where they can make change as opposed to worry about what might happen or, of course, worry about what has happened. So it's very interesting when we think about that. So one of the things that we do in our work, and I'm sure, Jessica, you do the same thing, is if we have clients that are spending too much time worrying about something that hasn't existed yet, what do? We talk about how that might happen, what's the likelihood that it might happen, and if we get them to a place where they realize that it's actually very small, then we ask the question again, what would you like to replace that space with? Because really what they're doing is they're eating up a bunch of space. They're filling space with something that may never happen. And of course, that's a very unresourceful place to be. So what might they want to fill that space with? What is missing in their lives that they feel that they don't have deep down? And how might they receive that now in the present moment and start spending more time in the here and now with themselves than worrying about the future or being regretful about the past, which neither of those they can change in this moment. So really solidifying the change, which is now.
See, it's funny because at the Institute, we say there's a third one. I agree with you, the past, the future, but we also say that a lot of people disconnect from reality when they get too much into themselves. Sometimes we have certain clients who are so focused on what is it that I'm feeling now? What is it that's happening to me right now? Am I having this? Am I having that? Am I feeling this? Am I feeling that? That they're completely disconnected from the reality around them. So they're neither in the past nor in the future. They're in the present, but their present is just limited to their insides, if I can say. So that is almost as bad as being too much in the past or too much in the future, because at the end of the day, you're totally disconnected from reality as well. The way I sometimes explain it to my clients is I'm very, I used to use metaphors and I use stories. So I usually tell people that I have a necklace that I collect beads for. And those beads are made up of moments. A moment is this. This is a moment. We're sharing a moment right now. You and I, Brad, and everybody connected with us tonight. This is a moment. There's no real measure of what a moment, how long it lasts. A moment used to be the measurement that I think the old Romans did in old sun watches, sun clocks. When the shadow moved, it was a moment. So it's imprecise. But what I usually teach my clients is, all those moments that you spend in your head, either remembering something that happened or imagining something that might happen or worried about what's going on in my body, in my mind, am I having this or am I having that, are moments that you're not connected to reality. So it's like those beads are empty moments. There's nothing in them because you didn't experience anything, you didn't learn anything, you did not collect anything. So those beads are transparent and empty. Every other moment in which you live something, be it good, bad, scary, joyful, whatever, something that you learn, something that you share, they're colorful beads. And each emotion or each experience colors the bead a different color. So I always tell my people, try and collect very colorful necklaces. Make your necklaces as colorful as you can, because each of those beads is a memory you made. And you will be able to get them back and look at them and enjoy them if you want to later on in life. But if they're empty, you will get the bead and there'll be nothing inside but smoke. So don't make your life up with empty beads, with beads of smoke. Every time you go into your head, be it in the past, in the future, or just inside doing nothing, is a moment you're not living. So that's how I usually explain it. I don't know if this answers the person's
Hmm.
question, but I think it's a graphic representation of something we can try and imagine when we have this habit of going into our heads. Might help them to picture, sorry,
Mhm.
picture these beads.
Yeah.
Well, there's more questions, Brad. Okay, they say, today there's a huge gap or emptiness of strong and inspiring leaders. Children lack strong parents. Teachers are diminished, politicians are corrupted, our century lacks strong beliefs, and we see it everywhere. We see our young generations suffering from very limiting circumstances as a result. So I guess, oh yeah, it goes on. It says, what do you think about the emperor child syndrome?
Hmm.
So I think the person's connecting the lack of leadership and the lack of strong leadership to uh, this emperor syndrome in children.
Okay. Interesting question. So, in the reference to the emperor child, are we referring to the lack of responsibility that comes with it, or the overburden of responsibility?
Okay, let's see if the person answers the question. And in the meantime, maybe we can focus on the first part of the question, Brad. There's a lack of strong and inspiring leaders. Children don't have enough strong parents or parents strong enough. Teachers are not reinforced. Their power is taken away from them, I would say.
Mhm.
Politicians are corrupted. Our time lacks strong beliefs.
Mhm.
This is a
Well,
whole set of beliefs.
yeah. So it's interesting because I mean, um, everything starts from the first drop. So the reality is that we can sit and there can be criticism to what is happening outside of what I do every day. It's easy for me to look around and see these things. And, isn't it interesting that we do see lack of leadership? It's interesting that no matter who you are, teachers, leaders, politicians, whatever it is that exists, it's quite a scrutinizing area to be living in. You have to have really tough skin. And I think I go back to thinking about the statement that we hear all the time is that you have to be the change you want to see. And it's sort of like it all starts with us. So, what do I think about that? Yes, unless we are doing something different in our household, in our immediate space, with our immediate others, then nothing will change. And if we are making that change exist for us, we are seeing more positives, if we are seeing it move in a better direction, if we are instilling I mean, uh, I've talked to lots of acquaintance, lots of friends, lots of colleagues that it's like they say the same thing. What a tough place to be in when your life is put in the public and everyone gets to criticize that. And it's usually the critic that's not on the stage. It's usually the one, again, that is not performing, that is the most critical of anything that's happening. So what do we want to do? We want to look inside of ourselves and say, if I have issue with something, if there's something going on, then as you said earlier, we want to instill in our children critical thinking, and that's a good way to do it. Ask myself, what is it that bothers me about our leaders? How would I do it differently? And if I'm willing to go ahead and make that happen. So it's not an easy question to answer. It's disappointing, but I'd also like to look at it from an inspiring way to think if I have the ability to notice what other people are doing, other leaders, other teachers, other politicians, and I feel that I can do it differently, then what prevents me from making that action so that I then can at least have an opinion about myself and critique myself as I move into that environment? Because we can't instill in others what we want them to do. We only have control over ourselves. So, and we want to definitely inspire those that we relate to. I've been inspired by many people in my life. I've also been inspired by global leaders. So I don't want to lose that perspective either. So yeah, it's a challenging time. I think we're coming to an opportunity in the world globally that we can start thinking differently and living more in support instead of critique, and to also be able to put forward some of our energies to those leaders that we are inspired by, and to be able to support them in ways that maybe they haven't experienced yet. So that's a
And it's
roundabout way
funny.
to answer it, but more
No,
possibility.
but I agree with you. I agree with you, Brad. We recently had a very special edition of Human Conversations. We had 6 panelists, both in Spanish and in English, and they all had to answer one question. What can I do for world peace? And the
Mm,
I didn't refer to them personally, but to the normal human being, to the normal individual. What can I, as a normal individual, do for world peace? Because one of the things that people kept on asking us at the Institute is, well, what can I do for peace? You know, everybody is talking about the war in Ukraine, the war in Gaza. What can I do for world peace? And we wanted to discuss it with experts, and we ended up preparing a list of proposals. It was a summary of the conclusions reached by the 2 panels. We translated both into Spanish and English, and we disseminated them. And it was a whole bunch of ideas of things people can do to support world peace. And as you said, it goes from the micro to the micro to the macro, well, from small to big, from the roots upwards. There's a lot we can all do. We can do things such as, for example, one of the things that was mentioned, we can stop looking the other way. We can stop pretending nothing's going on if there's an act of violence in front of us. We can join forces with other people in a peaceful way to defend those who are being victimized or assaulted or attacked. We can do many things at our own small level, and that will create a greater impact. If we all start doing that, there will be huge repercussions in the world. But if we do nothing, if we just look, or even worse, look the other way, nothing will change.
mhm,
So I agree with you. Leadership needs to change. Yes, the old systems have already proven to be wrong or useless in certain cases. And we've seen there's this progression in leadership from a very old traditional patriarchy model to a more democratic model to more, well, there is a progression. But I think that we need to make leadership something that belongs to all of us.
mhm,
I think that we should all be leaders of our own lives, our own jobs, our own discourse, and we should act it and live it. And that would really change the world. I agree with
mhm.
you, Brad.
I
So
agree.
the person answered, you know, because you asked him, what
Mhm.
aspect were you talking about?
Definition.
And
Yep.
the person said, let's keep it open. I would like to hear your thoughts in general. So the emperor child syndrome, your thoughts in general.
Okay. Well, I've never heard the term emperor child syndrome. So I can only
Okay,
surmise.
let me tell you a little bit of what this person's referring to, because we had a show not long ago on this
Oh, got
topic.
it. Okay.
Yeah, so what they mean is there's these children today that are tyrants in their own homes.
Hmm.
They dominate their parents. They throw tantrums. They listen to nobody. They respect nobody. So
Ah,
that's
got it.
what they call the emperor child.
Oh,
So I think that's what this person is referring to, because it came up about 2 weeks ago in one of our shows.
ooh, I must go back and see that show. So what do I think about the emperor child syndrome? Well, my grandmother always used to say, "Don't dislike the child, dislike the parent." So what we need to do is look at how the child's being raised, what's happening within the household, what brings them to a state in their environment to be reacting this way. What allowances have we given children to disrespect, to not be mindful? They're not born that way. They are made that way. So what do I think about it? I would be curious about what's going on for the parent that has held them in a space of being unable to satisfy some of the needs of the house and the family system. What restrictions do they have, or stressors, or limitations? What did they learn prior to that? Because that's what we see in families, is that, it's not only from the immediate sometimes. That is how we approach and change it. There's, of course, all kinds of external factors that go with that too, that we could go into for hours. Uh, Everything has changed so much. We live in a greater fear-based society. As a result of that, we can't expect to have conditions that we live in nowadays that are not going to be absorbed by children, that aren't going to be, and they've just come out of 2 years of COVID and being, again, humans need to be social. They're social creatures. We need to be in our environments and with our peers and be able to feel part of something. So I'm sure that is also another thing that our children have been experiencing. How do we correct it? We ask what's going on for them. Why are they reacting this way? What's coming up for them? 𝗪𝗪𝗢 𝗡𝗘𝗘𝗗𝗏 talks about, he said, we so seldom sit with it and ask what's coming up. We forbid it or we bribe it. And I love that. It's like we'll spend more time saying, yes, you can have your computer if you'll just stop being this way, or yes, you can have whatever if you'll stop being this way. Or we force them, no, you can't do this. No, you can't do that. So instead of actually sitting with the emotions that are coming up for them, because they're not there for no reason. Our emotions are there because our environment, our again, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory, all of our sensory system is taking something in. And as a result of that, our limbic system is saying something doesn't feel right. And that's why these children are reacting. They're reacting to something in the environment. And it's easy for us to say, okay, well, they're just getting away with something. But the reality is that the organism's reacting in a way because it's not satisfying a different need. Those are only symptoms. Anything that they do in action is a symptom of something deeper. Are we loving them enough? Are we respecting them enough? Are we giving them the attention they need? Do they feel supported? Do they feel enough? Because if they feel those things, something different will change. It'll shift. So if we can sit with it and ask those questions of our children when they are having tantrums and what they're experiencing, instead of forbidding them or bribing them to react in a different way, then will that change something? Inevitably, it'll change something because everything's always changing. But I think it's an approach that we use less of because we're used to immediate gratification. And what we're doing with children is we are developing young minds, and it's not just an overnight process. We need to be committed to the process of parenting and committed to the process of always being there for our children to help them understand emotionally. As we know, emotional intelligence happens from the time that we're born until now they're talking up to 30 years old before we're fully emotionally intelligent. That's a long period of time to be supporting someone. So, but yeah,
You see,
that's my initial thoughts on that.
I would also say that we mentioned critical thinking before, and I think that giving our children, again, the training they might need to critically think about themselves and their lives and their views and their opinions might make it harder for parents, because thinking children might be harder to manage than, robots and children that are just entertained with a laptop. But it would make life much better for those children in the future. So sometimes people don't give children or don't allow children the freedom to explore or to express or to question, because it's easier to keep them quiet in a corner playing. And that is something that will end up creating greater problems in the future. Whereas if you give them critical thinking and you give them the tools and you discuss it with them, it might make it harder now, but easier in the future. I think, kind of.
Reward.
This person, yes,
I say
sorry, what was it?
rewards are never the easy way. The best
Yeah.
reward.
Well, this person added something, maybe a clarification. This man said, I found your comment, we can model our children, very interesting. I find it very difficult to educate teenagers.
Hmm.
Can you elaborate on this concept a bit more?
So in the modeling piece, so when I
I
think
think
about,
so.
again, it is about us showing up the way that we want our children to be.
Mm.
So, I remember when I was younger and in school, I had a guidance counselor who used to say, do what I tell you to do, not what I do. And I always found that quite an interesting thing. So there's a request for us to be a certain way, but we're not seeing the adults model it. So I think when I think about even with teenagers, and again, which is a difficult time, we know that it's not the easiest time being a teenager. There's lots of requirements, and life has changed a great deal for some of them, lots of them. But I still think it to apply to all of these areas where it's a matter of showing up and modeling what we want, or being the person that we want them to be, showing kindness, showing openness, being available, caring for, loving, and demonstrating that, setting up a dynamic that it's not us and them, that we work together as a family, a society, as a culture, but also being open to inviting in other ideas, other notions. So teenagers, I think, especially at that very difficult place, and what happens in the teenage years is that we want to be accepted. We want to be part of the peer group. We want to be part of something. We always feel isolated. I'm not good enough. I'm weird. Something's happening with my body. Everything's
Please.
turmoil, and I don't look good enough. I'm not smart enough. All of these things that we're experiencing at that age, and I think it's even more important at that particular critical time where we're moving away from them coming to get nurturing from us because they're trying to become their own people. And that's even a more critical time for us to demonstrate that they have the opportunity to show up in a certain way. They have the opportunity to make choices. Choices have consequences, and they have a say in that. So it's really about, I want to say it's more aggressive point, or I wanted to say doubling down, but it's like that's the time when we really want to be more supportive. And that's the one time where we get more irritated by our children. It's like, come on, start adulting yourself and being that. But that's that critical time in the teenage years where they need our support even more, because the influences on the outside as they flex their muscle, moving into becoming adults, it's a critical time. We can't just pick them up and hold them like we used to, because they're becoming their own people. So again,
Yeah, but
just
they also sometimes want to be picked up and hugged.
yeah, metaphorically, we all want to be picked up and hugged.
But I want to change topics a little bit and now, because there is one question I want to ask you.
Sure.
We've been talking about who needs beliefs. And there is one thing that I think has a huge impact on beliefs, and that is trauma. You're an
Mhm,
expert in trauma.
mhm.
So, how does trauma impact our beliefs? Can trauma affect us in the way we think and we see the world? How do we go about uh, creating a healthy belief system if we're victims or if we suffered from trauma? So,
Mhm.
what is the role that trauma plays in beliefs? I know it's a
Ooh.
very general question, but I think
There's lots there.
you're the
Good question,
expert
Jessica.
and I need you to say something about it.
And I can totally, I'll try my best. How about that? So when I think about, you said a few things there that we work quite a bit with within the trauma-informed coaching lens. Um, And it can come with, I can get a lot of pushback on this particular thing, but we talk a lot about victimization and woundology. Carolyn Miss coined the term woundology. I love it. I think it explains quite a bit, but victimization we're all familiar with. Belief systems can actually suspend us within victimization and woundology. So our belief systems of something, I think about it in a respect when trauma happens to us, sometimes we have two avenues where we can go. We can look at the imprint of trauma and say we have an availability to adapt to it, which is what we've been doing for ever since humans existed. We have been doing what is called adapting. Adaptation has happened throughout our lives, evolving, growing. So we have this opportunity to look at anything that happens to us and say, okay, what can I learn from it? Whether it's, the traumatic event, when people have belief systems around it that they deserved what happened or that they made it happen, trauma is not that way. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't see people. It happens to everybody. It's not just but it's a very personal experience. The imprint of trauma is very personal. So these belief systems that show up within the trauma lens, where we see victimization or woundology, what we do is have an opportunity to look at it and say, if we can change some of those beliefs, we can take a person from being stuck and move them forward in a matter of adaptation or evolution, if you will. Because the reality is that we can't change the past. In coaching, we don't work in the past. What we do is we work towards the here and now and what they want or desire in the future, not the worry of it, but the desired change that they're trying to accomplish. So beliefs have a huge, huge part to play in trauma recovery, because it's our belief about who we are, who we were. We have to sacrifice who we are for who we're going to become. Lots of clients will come to me that have suffered trauma and say, I just want it to go back to the way it was. And we know, inevitably, no one can ever go back to the way that it was. And I'll say, what about if we moved forward to the way that we'd like it to be instead and make it even better than the way it was? So that all comes from our beliefs, the beliefs of whether or not I'm strong enough to continue forward, to be able to get through the traumatic imprint, the belief of whether or not I'll be someone after the traumatic imprint, if I can work somatically with my body because it is in its reactive mode. And of course, I have memory stored in my hippocampus. The spider, when I see it, I want to back away from it because you have a memory stored of it. So we work with that and say, okay, are we going to repeat this system, or are we going to build a new neural pathway based on a different belief, a different way of being? So I know that's kind of a general explanation for it. If we allow ourselves to believe nothing can change, I'll guarantee you that nothing will change. And if we believe we can change something, then I'll guarantee you that something will change. So belief systems play not only a huge piece in our life alone, but certainly in trauma itself. And if we believe that someone else is the responsibility of what happens to us, then we've given all of our power away to make the change in our life from the trauma imprint as well. So we have to be mindful of how we carry beliefs in our lives, because they do support or hinder us from moving forward, especially in trauma.
Yeah. Yeah, and we always say that everyone suffered trauma in their lives, everyone. And some people say, yeah, but my trauma was bigger. My circumstances were harder. To each person, their trauma could be the worst. And there's no comparison here. We all have to deal with what we have and what we live. And everyone has had problems in their lives. So it's not a matter of remaining stuck in the problem, because if you're stuck, you will never progress. You need to get going, you need to move. And sometimes we just need someone who can help us identify and question those beliefs properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
Which is,
One of the things that we see a lot of course, is that we've lost the idea that life is filled with ups and downs. And when I mean ups and downs, I'm talking about quite deep valleys and quite high mountains. And we have some idea because since the creation of Facebook and TV, that everyone's living these fabulous lives. So, and I guess with AI, we'll all be able to live it and not actually have to pay for it. So, but it's like the reality is that life is filled with experiences. Some of them are heartbreaking, some of them are so joyful, some of them are difficult, and some of them are sweet. And to be able to understand and evolve through that and live with it is the best thing for us to, again, don't deny it, don't bribe it, but sit with it. It's the experience of life. It's the journey. It's not the destination. And it's filled with ups and downs. It's filled with loss and love and relationships and anger and joy. So that's the life experience. And I think sometimes we forget that. Certainly deep trauma experiences we don't want to have, nor would we wish them on other people. But they exist and we can't pretend that they don't. And being able to live through and move forward's the best way, the course of action.
One question about this for you from the audience. How to distinguish between real trauma and invented trauma? Something good for us to have as we got attention from others or self-justification.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, the interesting thing between real trauma, or we talk about trauma, the experience of trauma or the reminder of it, we call them, I think people call them triggers, of course, but we call them memories or reminders. It's hard to distinguish between a perceived threat or a real threat because the mind doesn't know. It feels exactly the same. But I'm not going to just sort of wave over that. How do we distinguish that the experience that we're having right now, the anxiety or the stress or what's coming up in our body, how do we distinguish that from the fear brain saying, hey, be mindful here, something's about to happen, and it not really, it just being a reminder? We draw awareness. There will be signs of it coming. The interesting thing about trauma imprint is it usually is upon us before we recognize it. That's why it snapshots that, stores it in our hippocampus. Our amygdala has caused this stress and hormone chemicals to flood through our body. And again, it'll store that memory so that if its sensory system, the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory, re-experiences something similar to it, I smell smoke, I hear an ambulance, I see a bush that looks like a bear, any of those things, the body will still react the same. But we will have a pre-sensory system happen. Our body will start sensing it. So if we can bring awareness to it, we can then start understanding, is this a perceived threat or is it a real threat? So what is making me feel unsafe? So start noticing, start becoming aware. And that is a difficult thing. So it's bringing awareness to the sensory state before it moves us into a full-blown reaction. And how do we do that? There will be moments we bring awareness to it. Oftentimes what we do with experiences we don't want is that we try to push them out. And the rule of thumb is if we push them, they push back. So start listening to our body. Start saying, oh, I'm starting to sense something. What am I sensing? Why am I sensing it? Don't push it away. This is an inappropriate time. I'm in a social setting. I don't want to feel this anxiety. Be more curious. Why am I feeling this? What's the body's intention that's positive? Does it want to keep me safe? And then look at it deeper and go, okay, thank you for having that intention. I'm safe here. This is just a perceived threat, but don't ignore that the body had it for you because its only one purpose is to keep you safe and to celebrate that it has that intention for you, but that everything's okay. And then we start looking at it and going, okay, now I can work through this particular feeling, this particular experience. Or if it is real, then of course your body will overreact on you anyway. it will take care of you because its purpose is just to keep you alive.
And there, beliefs also play an important role, because imagine a person who suffered from trauma, I don't know, abuse, for example, and suddenly somebody says something. They might interpret it as an insult or an attack when it's not, because their belief system is leading them to believing it so. This person was insulting me, and maybe they were not at all, but because their belief system says you deserve to be insulted and attacked all the time, they might take it as that. So we go back to beliefs. Beliefs, I think, also play an important role in this whole complex world of trauma.
Well, and even the belief of what's safe and what's not safe, it can be extreme, right? You
Totally, yeah.
could fear roses because a bee stung you. And it's like, therefore, your belief is that roses are, could be a violent thing. So we want to look at it and go, okay, well, I'm setting myself up on the stage of things being threatening. That's a belief. So again, looking at that belief, is the rose really threatening? So
Thank you so much, Brad. I think this was a really, really insightful and interesting conversation. I think that there were many questions from the audience, and people were really interested in everything you had to share. I think the topic could give us hours and hours and hours to discuss, and we could be here talking for days, because there's so much to say about beliefs. But I think this is a good opening for people to start exploring beliefs and understanding what they mean and how they impact our lives. I want to thank you for your time, for your kindness, and for sharing all your wisdom and knowledge with us and our viewers. And I hope to have you some other time with us at the Institute in one of our human conversations, because I think you have a lot to share with the world. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks so much for asking me along, and thank your audience. A complete pleasure. Fantastic to be able to have a coffee and share thoughts with you today. So thank you for the work you do.
No, thank you. Really, thank you very much. And to our viewers, just a very quick reminder that Human Conversations happens every month. We approach a human topic. This month, we're talking about beliefs. But next month, January 2024, the topic chosen by you, our viewers, is Speak Without Fear. Another matter of beliefs, maybe. So we'll have our human conversations on the following perspective: conquer your stage fright. We're going to be talking to some experts about how to conquer our fear of public speaking. Don't miss it, next January 15th, here at the International Institute of Humanology. I'm Jessica Lockhart. Thank you for being there. Don't forget to continue writing your comments and questions on our YouTube channel so we can answer them. Have a fantastic evening. Thank you and goodbye.